3/4 lower. September beans falling 58.5 to 14.28 3/4. November beans at 14.07, slipping 61.5. September wheat losing 22.5 to 7.85 1/4. October live cattle down 20 cents at 142.02. October lean hogs $1.07 lower at 96.17. I'm CJ Miller. Who's your ag today? Timely, relevant, credible.
Your number one source of news and information in LaPorte County is 96.7 The Eagle at hometownnewsnow.com.
Time now for Pet Patrol here on 96.7 The Eagle. And we have no lost or found pets to report to you today. But if your pet runs off or you find somebody else's lost pet, call 219-362-6144 to report that lost or found pet. Pet Patrol airs throughout the day, Monday through Friday, as part of your update news, and it's absolutely free. That number again for Pet Patrol, 219-362-6144.
On air at 96.7 FM. Online at hometownnewsnow.com. This is your number one source of news and information in LaPorte County. 96.7 The Eagle. Welcome to Sound Off on 96.7 The Eagle, LaPorte County's original social media. Sound Off is a public interest forum that encourages your voice to be heard on the topics and issues impacting our local communities. For the next 30 minutes, we invite you to be part of the conversation by calling 219-362-0522. And you can now text your questions to the Liquor Vault on-air line or by email to soundoff@967theeagle.com. This is a topic-based program, and we ask that you keep your comments brief, concise, and related to the topic being discussed. The views expressed on Sound Off are those of the host or callers and do not represent the opinion of 96.7 The Eagle, Spoon River Media LLC, or the sponsors. The Liquor Vault on-air line is now open for your calls or texts at 219-362-0522. This is Sound Off on 96.7 The Eagle.
Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for listening to Sound Off today. It is August 1st on Monday here in LaPorte County. It's beautiful outside. I don't know if you've been there, but the weather's great. And we've got in the studio with us today, LaPorte County Councilman Earl Cunningham. How are you, Earl?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Good to see you guys.
We were just talking about, the history of LaPorte basketball, especially in the 80s and the 90s when you were coaching there in the 80s. Who would you say probably is the best player you coached?
I had a lot of great players. I'm not going to get into
I was going to say, yeah. Well, they're all listening, I'm sure.
I had a lot of really, really good players. Everybody thinks that my immediate answer would be Delray because
Sure.
of the fame that he had. But when you really look back with that team with Gales and Rogers, and there were 5 Division I players, most people don't realize Gales didn't play at Michigan City as a freshman. He scored 2,000 points in Mississippi as a freshman. He was the leading scorer and leading rebounder in his conference as a 9th grader. His dad lived in Michigan City, and Mom was having some trouble disciplining him. Same up here, and it was a blessing. So we had him for 3 years, pound for pound, inch for inch. There's another kid named Mike Lemons that was like a miniature Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Some great talent, though.
I don't ever say who's the best player. I say this guy was the best shooter, this guy was the best rebounder. That way I can name about 20 people.
Okay, no. All right, here's one. Because a lot of coaches listen, or a lot of coaches. Who would you think was the best teammate? Because, again, that might not even be the best player, might not even be the best shooter. Who are some of those guys that you said would have been the best teammates?
My very first year, we had a kid that the previous coach told me he was going to cut him. His name was Wayne Buell. And when I saw him I had been hired that summer. When I saw him right after being hired, I told him, I said, well, I can tell you right now, it's your lucky day because you were going to get cut. He'd already made his mind up you weren't in the top 12 players. And I'm going to tell you right now, you better be in the top 5 by the time we were ready to start. I said, because you're a senior and I've got good juniors, you better work hard this summer.
Essentially, I don't need you, right?
A 6'1" kid that couldn't dunk became one of our valuable assets. I mean, I tell people all the time, nobody's ever gotten more out of their natural talent than Wayne Buell. Loved the kid. He'd run through a wall for you. Started every game. He was playing with a 6'8", 6'7", 6'5". Delray was a 6'4" guard. He's 6'1", playing forward. Ended up leading our team in offensive and defensive rebound totals.
Wow.
Didn't lead in offense or defense, but he led in the totals. Ended up getting a scholarship because of that, because they couldn't believe that he was a better rebounder than the big guys we had. But he was like a Larry Bird guy. He just ran to where the ball was going to be.
He just seemed to know it, right?
He was like he had a nose for the ball. So he's one of the guys that I always talk about. There's always room. I tell people, if you're the best defensive player, best rebounder, best passer, they're going to find a spot for you on the bench.
Sure. So let's get into talking a little bit about what's happening in the county. We could trade basketball stories all day because I'd love that. But I know people want to hear about what's happening with the county council, these kind of things. Now, you have had multiple, actually. You did, I think, maybe an 8-year stint. And then in 2020, you got back onto the council as well. And so you've been on there for a little over a year and a half, 2 years now.
Year and a half. Yeah.
And it's been an eventful year and a half, right?
I would say so. Very eventful, certainly. And it's unique because when I ran the first time, I said when I ran in 2006 that I thought there should be term limits, and that I assured people that I would only run 2 terms. And I then endorsed Randy Novak, who was in my
on
district.
The council still now, yeah.
Randy and his wife were both former students of mine, and I knew he was a great guy. And I endorsed Randy and then set out, and then I said, I'm not going to run against the guy I endorsed. I'll wait for an at-large race. So that's why I held off until 20.
What kind of student was Council President Randy Novak?
Very good student.
Good.
Very good student.
All right, so let's get to some questions. If you've got a question for County Council person Earl Cunningham, Randy's not
Novak,
here.
Randy Cunningham, whatever.
One of them. 219-362-0522. All right, a few months ago, you did vote in favor of a tax increase in LaPorte County, and it was a controversial tax increase by some. Many people thought it was a no-brainer. You had to do it. And this is the public safety local income tax, and it raised taxes about 0.5%. But that money will need to go for public safety purposes, correct? It needs to go towards the police, the fire, the
right.
EMS, these kind of things. Now, I know you had some deliberating about what that increase would, ultimately be decided on spending, these kind of things. But explain to our listeners why you ultimately did vote in favor of the increase.
Ultimately, it came down to whether LaPorte County was going to survive with paying our sheriff's deputies. We have $1 million twice a year we pay for their merit pension. And had it not been for the riverboat funds, we were in trouble already. And maybe Mayor Dermody, he was the best salesman, there's no question. Dermody did a great job selling it. But when we look back at it now, virtually every governmental unit in LaPorte County is going to look back and say, if we didn't have this, we were struggling, because you just can't compete. You've got to pay those guys enough money to keep them from going to Valpo or to Chesterton or wherever they might go. And ultimately, it's going to help everybody. It's not, everybody says, well, it is a safety lit, but when you think about, we have $1 million that was going to a pension twice a year, that's safety lit money that frees up $1 million somewhere else. So I think it's going to help the county as a whole. There's no question. And I'm amazed that when this went out to the governmental units, the only one where it was even close was in Michigan City. I think they had 3 negative votes. That was a 6-3. It was actually 6-2, but the guy that was not there that night would have voted against it. We know that. He had spoke against it several times. But it was like 90% of your outlying units. And I give credit to Mark Yagelski for making that recommendation, that before we vote on this, let's send it out to Westville and Wanatah and La Crosse and all these other units that are going to benefit from it, or take the flack for it because we passed it. So, but they were overwhelmingly in favor of it, and our vote on the council was 6-1. The guy that sent it out to those units, it came back 90%. He voted against it. I kid Mark all the time. Well, you're the guy that said this is the way we should do it. He says, I understand. He said, but I just don't think we have a plan enough how we're going to spend it. I said, I don't think it's, I said, we're going to wish we had more before it's all said and done.
So the county's in the process. I don't know if you finished budgeting yet, or I know you're doing budgeting meetings, or you have anyway recently for the 2023 year. The council get asked by every department, every group, even some nonprofits, these kind of things, for funding, for money. We know that inflation costs are going up, salaries, these kind of things. How do you decide that something is worthy of being included in the county budget as a council member? Kind of, do you have a paradigm that you put it through, or an equation to say, okay, this is important? Because you do have to say no sometimes, correct?
I think a lesson I learned early in college in economics class was there's a big difference between needs and wants. And I just try to draw a line right in the middle of the page and say, hey, we'd love to have this, but this is something we need. We have to have this. This we'd like to have.
Yeah.
So I pretty much needs and wants kind of guy. Smaller amounts, there are certain organizations, it's hard for me to say no to the handicapped. It's hard for me to, anytime you can help somebody pull themselves up by the bootstraps, I think that's a valuable asset. And they're not coming in asking for $3 or $4 million. They want $15,000 here or $20,000 here. In fact, the other night, somebody from at our last council meeting on the 25th, somebody came in and asked for $4,000. Well, that's like a couple cents when you look at it in the big picture. And it was a one-year deal. Show us the results. I think that's something we did very well with the rent assistance. We said, yeah, we'll give you. They want $100,000 right up front. So no, let's start with $10,000, and then come back and get another $10,000. As long as we see it's being spent properly instead of just divvied out to your friends and neighbors, then we can keep funding it. And I think that's going to work. I mean, they've done a great deal as far as weeding out people that really deserve this money, the rent assistance, and people that are trying to pull a con job, because those are people are out there. There's no question.
For sure. We've got Earl Cunningham, LaPorte County Council member, on the show today. If you have a question for Earl, the Liquor Vault on-air line is 219-362-0522. You're welcome to call or text me your questions. If you're shooting with us online, you can put your questions there in Facebook or YouTube, and I'll get those as well. Let's get to a caller. Hey, thanks so much for calling the show. Thanks for listening to the Sound Off Radio Show. What's your question for Councilperson Earl Cunningham?
Thank you for coming on the air, Mr. Cunningham. This is Steve Hollifield here.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Fine, sir. How are you today?
Good.
I would like to make one quick comment for my question. The state allows us up to 3.5% of local income tax. I believe within 5 years we will be at the full max here, as you saw how easy it was to push this last one through. So that's just a prediction I'm making. Now, my question, sir, earlier this year at a council meeting, you said when it comes time for budgeting, you should look at, I believe, a 10% inflation factor. If that is the case, has anybody asked for requests for proposals to outsource anything, eliminate jobs in the county government that could be done cheaper and just as efficient with outside services to help save the taxpayer money? So I think that should be looked at, and I was just wondering, has anybody requested any of that yet? Thank you.
Thanks for calling, Steve.
Actually, that has happened, Steve. If you watch the budget hearings, I think Mike Schultz has eliminated 3 positions in his office over the last 6-8 years. The sheriff's department outsourced the food processing. They had a full-time employee actually in the jail overseeing that. So there are attempts. Everybody's trying to stretch their money. The problem in some areas is outsourcing is almost impossible, like in the clerk's office, for example. I give the clerk, Heather Stevens, credit because she's brought in a lot of part-time people to try to catch up. Same thing as in the recorder's office. There were periods of time when we were just falling farther and farther behind. I agree with you 100%, Steve, in that when they first got computers 30 years ago, we had 800 employees, and we still have about 800 employees. And computers should have speeded up the process. The problem is that as computers speeded up the process, the state government and federal government increased the amount of paperwork they had to have tracking county work. And so it hasn't resulted in a 10% reduction in our staff. There's no question about that. Steve brings up a good point. I'm one of those guys that's always looking for a way to, can we get away with reducing our staff? Sometimes we had an example with the park department, and they've gotten by hiring part-time people to work in the summer. Well, they can't do that anymore because guys say, well, I can get a full-time job making $15 an hour. Why am I going to come to you for $15 an hour? And so he couldn't get any applicants part-time, but he still had to have people doing the lawn, mowing the lawns and cleaning the shelters and so forth. So he had to take a part-time position, convert it to full-time, but he's not going to fill the part-time job. We just keep making adjustments on the fly. The other thing you have to give the park department credit. Our park department is pretty good. We got a really, really nice park department in LaPorte County. They just added another park that won't be too high of in maintenance.
I think it's Jeremy Sebecki's department, right?
Yes, Jeremy does a great job. I'm a big fan. And he tries to do it on a shoestring. He's not gouging us. And my concern is just the opposite. Steve, I would say this. Most people came in, and all we dealt with at this point in time is the 200 and 300 accounts, like the gasoline and automobiles and things like that. If I was a department head, I would do exactly what they do. They come in and say, I have no changes in my 200 and 300 account. Well, then we're all happy. We say, well, I vote to pass. Passes unanimously. It's those that are trying to increase their 200 and 300 accounts. Now we got to go through fine-tooth comb. Why are we doing this? And I give this as an example of how over the years, they've learned this is the quickest way to get in and out, no hassle. They're not talking about salaries. We're talking about $200 and $300 accounts. No changes. No changes whatsoever. Motion to approve. Bang, they're gone. And I particularly noted this one because over our last meeting, we gave John Boyd $200,000 for 1/3 of what he needed just for increases in food and gas. And that's going to be for the last half year. So in my head, I'm pretty quick. I'm saying, well, that's $600,000. Now let's stretch it out for all of 23. That's another $1.2 million that he really needs. So I'm waiting when he comes in with his 200s and 300s. No change on our 200s and 300s. I said, Sheriff Boyd, didn't you just ask us for $600,000 to finish the year? You need 1.2. If the price of food and gas doesn't go down, you're going to be 1.2 million short, correct? He says, yeah, but we'll just come back in and ask for it next year. And that's part of our dilemma that we've built a culture of. And part of that was because the state would only let you grow by 3%, 4%, 5%. They had a growth factor.
Yeah.
And so we got in this habit of under budgeting and come back and ask for money out of the casino fund or out of the general fund. And it's hard to tell what our real budget is.
So yeah, you're approving a budget each year that's really not an accurate budget.
No, it's an underinflated budget. That's what it comes down to. We know that the price of gasoline is not going down to $2.50.
Yep.
Or I shouldn't say no, but I'm pretty sure it won't be back to $2.50.
Yep.
So how do you budget when gasoline can fluctuate by $1 a gallon?
Sure.
It's tough to do that in his food prices.
But you know it's going to increase though, right? That's the thing is you got to know it's going to increase. So you can't ask for the same amount of money because you know for sure
it's going to increase. And that's my whole theory is if we didn't have the public safety lit, we weren't going to be able to pay some people, or we weren't going to be able to pay for food and gas. I mean, there's a matter of at some point in time, there's got to be enough money.
Yeah, and there's only so many ways that you can increase revenue as a government, right? I mean,
Correct.
And so, all right, well, we've got Earl Cunningham here, LaPorte County Council member. We're going to take a break here, get back to your questions. We see you've got a couple callers, these kind of things. If you've got a question, you can call me, 219-362-0522. You can also text me that same number, 219-362-0522. And we'd be happy to take your calls here and answer any questions you might have about the LaPorte County Council. So thanks so much for listening. We'll be right back here only on 96.7 The Eagle.
For over 50 years, LaPorte has trusted Cannon's Automotive Service for prompt, efficient, same-day service. And that same Cannon's commitment extends to area businesses who rely on a fleet of one or many to take your goods or service to the customer. Whether it's the truck or trailer that needs maintained or fixed, trust Cannon's Automotive to maximize your productivity with same-day service. Now with 2 Cannon's locations, 710 Tyler Street and 909 Boyd Boulevard.
With Cannon's Automotive, we fix everything.
When construction companies pay their workers cash under the table, Hoosiers lose out. By not paying their fair share, these companies are stealing over $405 million a year from Hoosiers. Do you know what $405 million a year could do for your community? 8,741 state troopers, 7,937 teachers, 325 miles of resurfaced highways, 112 miles of expanded highways, 783 small business loans, 9,722 new jobs. That's a whole lot of losses. Visit indianacip.com/tax fraud to learn how you can take a stand.
It's no wonder LiftMaster is the #1 professionally installed garage door opener. LiftMaster's MyQ technology alerts you if you forgot to close your garage door and lets you close it from anywhere, anytime with built-in Wi-Fi. It also has battery backup, so you can get in your garage even when the power's out.
Don't panic. MC Doors same-day service is here for you. Go to mcdoors.com. That's right, mcdoors.com. It's back. Ticket Tuesdays are back on 96.7 The Eagle. Be listening every Tuesday during the Morning Mayhem with Joe and Dennis for your chance to win tickets to
Indiana Beach, short overnight stay at any Red Roof Inn along with Shell gas cards.
So who doesn't like free stuff? Join Joe and Dennis on the Morning Mayhem every Tuesday between 6 and 9 a.m. for your chance to win during our Ticket Tuesday giveaway, brought to you by LaPorte Community Federal Credit Union and 96.7 The Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to Sound Off. You can now text or email your questions directly to the studio. Call or text 362-0522 or email your questions to soundoff@967theeagle.com. This is Sound Off.
Welcome back, friends. This is Nate Laux, and you're listening to the Sound Off Radio Show only on 96.7 The Eagle. We've got LaPorte County Council person Earl Cunningham here in the studio with us. Glad to have you, Earl. If you've got a question for Earl, the Liquor Vault on-air line is 219-362-0522. You're welcome to call or text that number. Again, that's 219-362-0522. We'd be happy to hear from you. Let's get to a caller. Hey, thanks so much for waiting on the line. Thanks for listening to the show. What's your question for Earl Cunningham?
Well, my name's Larry Reeves. And I'm glad Earl's on the council. But my issue is property taxes for seniors. I know the county's hurting for funds, but I've lived in this county all my life, and now I'm in a situation where I'm retired. I'm 72 years old. I'm a veteran, and I know the state has a limit on the rate, but there's no limit on the appraised value. And it just keeps going up and up. And I might be forced out of my home. I've sent messages to Governor Holcomb. He did not respond. I've sent messages to Jim Pressel, who's worthless. Bahacek did respond. His response was that 30% of the people in LaPorte County are seniors. Where do you expect us to get our money? And I think all these tax breaks that give all these businesses coming in, they should have some kind of thing in the contract where if they're very, very successful, that they pay some of that money back to the county. And if they fail, they fail. Or they don't fail, or they just kind of keep their head above water. Then, yeah, you need jobs. But if somebody's doing really well, then they should give the money back to the county. Because I'm telling you, the seniors...
I agree.
I think they're hurting overall on property taxes. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for calling. And it is, as these, as home values are being sold, you see houses that are sold now for $250,000 that I know when we were looking for a house in 2015, the house was maybe 125 to 150. And so the values are going up, right?
One of my assistant coaches when I was coaching has passed away several years ago, but his wife is still in the home they built for $30,000. A couple blocks off Long Beach and are away from the water, but close to the golf course. It's not on the golf course. It's not on the beach, but it's
in the neighborhood.
You can see both of them pretty close. You know what I'm saying? And she got a tax bill one year for $6,000.
Mm-hmm.
She said that means in 5 years I will have paid for my house again just in property taxes. Well, she's like 95, 96 years old now.
Yeah.
And her income is fixed. Fortunately, when the $6,000 bill came in, we caught the air. I went out and went through. They had her on the golf course. She's across the road from the golf course, so that cut it down dramatically. But I understand exactly what he's saying, and I think I would agree that at some point in time, our elderly and our veterans who have financial need. My wife and I are very fortunate. We're both older than the caller, but we both spent 30 years in the school system, and we have a nice pension, and we have Social Security, and it's not like we needed money. That's the problem is. It's almost like you have to have a sliding scale for everything, financial need. I don't want, the last thing I want to do is put a senior veteran out of his home, and that's why I think we have these rental assistance, mortgage assistance programs. I would suggest that he go to his township trustee. Whatever township he's in, find his trustee and go in, and if he can show his financial situation that, hey, I have to choose between taxes and groceries, then the trustee can probably help. And sometimes it takes more paperwork than you want to do, but if that's what it takes to keep you in your house, then you probably should do that. So that would be my first recommendation. He can give me a call later. My home number, let me give you my cell number because that's the one I answer more often, is at 219-861-7070. But I agree 100%. We can't be forcing veterans and seniors out of their homes.
Yeah, exactly. The inflationary cost for seniors is the same as everyone else. They're paying more for food. They're paying, and there's a limited budget.
And their other one that's tremendously inflated is medications.
Yeah, absolutely. That's ridiculous.
It's absolutely, it kills them.
All right, let's get to another caller. Hey, thanks so much for calling. Thanks for waiting on the line. We've got Earl Cunningham here, LaPorte County Council member. What's your question for Earl?
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Good. How's it going, Mr. Cunningham?
That sounds like one of my former basketball players in the middle 80s. Yeah, he's on that. He probably was on that team that came into LaPorte with Chico and Terry and Dozo, right? Weren't you on that team?
Was he the one that you mentioned was the best player you had?
Well, I get it. There was an interesting story.
I was the one playing with all the 5 Division I players.
Interesting story.
So you had a role on the team, right? You had a role.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a great practice player. One of my favorite stories about him is his brother was going to LaPorte or to Marquette at the same time. We were playing a Marquette game, and Marquette coach, a friend of mine, had taken his brother out. I said, put him back in. I'm putting Bobby in. And so Bob went in, stole the ball from him, went down for a layup. That's his claim to fame.
So you're at least better than your brother, right?
Yeah, he was a little shorter than me, so I had a little advantage.
All right, what's your question, bud?
Yeah. Hey, my road's been on the news lately for being one of the most dangerous roads in the county. 900 west and 400 north there.
Pretty big drop off on both sides.
Yeah, well, people just drive like idiots. That's number one. But it's at the end down there. But when they come cut the ditch, they don't bring the articulating one. They just bring one that just drops a little bit on the side, and they don't get the trees back. I mean, down at the corner, if you're in a little car, you can't see out. That's the problem with a lot of accidents.
Right.
So they really need to do something about that corner, and there's a big pothole right there. If you're in a truck pulling a trailer, you're either going to hit it with your truck or you're going to hit it with your trailer. You can't avoid it because it's too narrow, So I don't know if you could have them, maybe bring the nicer mower down our road. Maybe we wouldn't have so many accidents. Because the other one just, can't really do the right job.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're talking about, and I'll give Dwayne. I'll give Dwayne at the County Highway Barn. I'll give him a call on that. And I know part of your problem is you and I have discussed this. I think in the past, one of the reasons they don't get any tickets on your road is because there's no place to pull them over. You think about it.
There's a couple entry fields they can pull in.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, there's no way anybody can pull off the road. I mean, that's
and then when those guys do come down and cut, just because I cut it, they'll turn around and go the other way. It's like, no, please cut it again, Because then I got people cussing at me because grass gets thrown in the road. How am I supposed to go? Walk up and down the road with my blower? It's like a losing battle. So if you can help me out,
you're doing a great job taking care of your area. I know exactly where you're at. You know that.
Thank you, guys. All right, well, you guys have a great day.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Take care. We've got Earl Cunningham on the show. Earl is a LaPorte County Council member. Here's a question for you. The 39 North Corridor needs some investment into its water infrastructure to accommodate its residential and industrial growth that's happened there. Now, the city of LaPorte has said they'd like to make those investments for the 39 North area if and only if they agree to annex themselves into the city. Has the council considered making those investments in that area instead?
I know there's discussions. I'm not on that committee, but I know there are discussions with either a water tower, fixing the sides of the lines. They don't have enough pressure for.
Yep.
It's a fire issue for some of it.
Yep.
Fortunately, we got a retired fireman on our. Randy's a retired fireman, so he's on that committee. I know that. But we're obviously, we don't want to lose county revenue as well. I mean, they pay a lot of taxes out there. The city wants to annex, so then that presents another issue. We don't want to spend a lot of money on it, and then the city annex it, and we lose revenue. That's kind
so
of
not knowing where it's going to go yet. Yeah.
So it's right now. It's a matter of the city and the county and the 39 North. People all working together to try to figure out what's the best plan.
Yeah. All right. We've got Earl Cunningham on the show. If you want to give us a call, 219-362-0522. We're going to take another quick break, our final break of the day, and be right here, back here on 96.7 The Eagle.
Ben Conowitz here, owner of LaPorte Seamless Gutter. My parents started LaPorte Seamless Gutter in 1982 with one goal in mind, really. Our customers' 100% satisfaction. And we are still providing the same customer service that Tim and Seal Conowitz started all those years ago. Give us a call today for a free estimate at 219-362-9972, or you can visit us on the web, www.lpseamless.com. 219-362-9972.
It's back and bigger than ever. Of course, I'm talking about this year's LaPorte Municipal Airport's Airfare 2022 Pancake Breakfast. This year's Pancake Breakfast is from 7 to noon, Sunday, August 7th. And if you need more food, check out the food trucks from 10 to 5 all weekend. Don't forget to walk around and look through the various craft vendor booths, as well as the antique car display. It's all taking place August 6th and 7th at the LaPorte Municipal Airport, just off State Road 39. Thanks to sponsors like Howmet Manufacturing and LaPorte Aero Club. For more information, visit LaPorteAirport.com.
Parents, as your children prepare to return to school, make sure they're up to date on routine immunizations. Vaccines help keep your child healthy, protect other students, and have even put an end to some diseases. So, before school begins, remember to start smart. Schedule your child's appointment today and make routine immunizations part of your back-to-school checklist. A friendly reminder from the Indiana Department of Health. Learn more at startsmart.health.in.gov.
Hey, who's hungry? Because I've got a deal for you. Dennis Adele here to introduce you something new to the Morning Mayhem. Every weekday at 6:55, it's Denny's Diner. Yep, Joe and I will cook up some trivia questions, and if you have the correct answer, you'll be the winner of a $20 gift card from either JJ's Side Out Bar and Grill, the Burger Bar and Grill, JJ's Pizza Shack, Wanna Pizza, or Nowhere Bar and Grill. So join us weekdays for Denny's Diner at 6:55 on the Morning Mayhem for your chance to win here on 96.7 The Eagle.
Michiana weather.
Highs around 82 this afternoon. Under partly cloudy skies, winds out of the northwest, 10 to 15 miles per hour. Tonight, lows around 63. High of 84 tomorrow. From the Weather Center at HometownNewsNow.com. Right now, 81.
Your opinion matters. We invite you to share it by calling or texting the Liquor Ball on-air line at 362-0522. That's 362-0522. Now, back to Sound Off on 96.7 The Eagle.
Welcome back, friends, to our final segment of Sound Off for the day. We've got Earl Cunningham, LaPorte County Council member, here on the show. Here's a question that came in through our text line. Why not give the Highway Department a raise with this tax increase? If it wasn't for them, how do you expect any police, fire, or EMS to get to their calls during winter or bad storms?
That's a great question, and that's what every department says. You know, if we didn't do the paperwork, these people don't hear us. You know, I mean, every office can make a legitimate argument, and you think about it, that's when they started giving out money for raises, and they used the term essential. I said, I can't vote for essential workers. I think everybody's essential or we should fire them. That's the bottom line. If they're not necessary to run the county, why are they on our payroll?
Yeah.
And who wants to make that decision? You show me why this person doesn't have a job. And nobody wanted to do that. So truth be known, it's like a big jigsaw puzzle, and it all fits together somehow. So the county highway, those guys do a great job, especially in the wintertime when you need it most. I mean, we appreciate them out there painting lines and mowing and all this stuff in the summer. But when you get that first 6 inches of snow, that's when you really appreciate your county highway guys. And they are underpaid. There's no question. I agree with them 100%.
All right, let's get to another caller here. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Sound Off Radio Show. So grateful for you. What's your question for Earl Cunningham?
Well, good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hi.
It's a twofold question I have. The first part is I know that Michigan City is looking for help from the county to repair their bridge over there by the park, and I don't understand why LaPorte County is going to have their hands on that since that's in the city over there. And besides that, they do charge LaPorte County residents to come into the beach area there. The second part of the question, since you're doing that for Michigan City, it seems like the county is kind of pushing back on LaPorte with that, bypass around the city for some reason. So it seems like there's two different things going on, but they're helping one but not the other. So I'm just trying to figure that out.
Well, thanks so much for calling. And for our listeners that might not be familiar, they're talking about the drawbridge here in Michigan City. And Earl can fill in a little bit because it is a complicated understanding of who pays for what, who owns what, these kind of things. And then the LaPorte bypass, because the commission just recently voted essentially not in favor of the proposed plans that they had. So go ahead.
All right, on the bridge issue, the bridge is over a federal waterway. So the Coast Guard actually has control of when that bridge has to go up and down. It's what they call a major bridge, and it's counties. The bridge belongs to the county.
And that's according to the state, right?
That's according to the federal government.
Oh, the federal
state
government,
yeah. It comes federal, state.
Any bridge in the county, the county has to pay for, essentially.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, you could have a bridge in a city, but there's some smaller bridges like over Trail Creek.
Yeah,
what I mean? But that one goes over a federal waterway, so then it's federal government telling the state that you got to take care of the bridge. And so that's the first issue. My biggest complaint there is I went over and talked to the guys at the Coast Guard. I said, how many of these boats that are coming through here actually have to have that bridge raised? He said 90% of them wouldn't have to raise the bridge if they would just lower their antenna. Well, to me, it seems like now you're just bragging about you got a boat. You go through there and honk your horn, and they have to raise a bridge because your antenna won't clear. Well, drop your antenna until you get under the bridge, raise it back up. That's what frustrates me, because every time a bridge goes up and down, there's a greater chance that it's going to fail. On a second issue, I'm not aware of enough. I know the commissioners voted against the proposal.
Yeah, they didn't vote the bypass down completely.
Right.
Just they didn't like the proposals that were presented.
And trust me, nobody's going to like. You're not going to get anybody in agreement that they all like one proposal, because some people like this one, some people like that one. And it depends on whose fields you're going through and whose home's getting removed. And so that's a tough issue. I'm not involved with that in any way, shape, or form at this point in time. And I kid Durham all the time. I tell him that, well, trust me, I'm going to be off the council before you even start building that bypass. No matter what your plan is, I won't be involved with that one.
Another question here from kind of about the bridge. I don't know if this is the caller that also texted one, but is the $1.5 million being spent on the bridge in Michigan City, the drawbridge there, being used as a repair every year, or is that just an annual maintenance fee?
That's basically a year-round maintenance contract with Marquis. And in reality, that's pretty cheap compared to what we were paying before. And what they were talking was like $180 to $200 million to rebuild a bridge. I mean, astronomical, and the number of years that you would be laid up without a bridge. So it's a big, complicated issue. There's no question about that. We're very fortunate that Marquis Electric almost treats that as their personal property. They don't even take vacations at the same time. The two guys that work on that bridge, they coordinate so that one of them will be in town.
So is there someone at the bridge essentially from Marquez Electric all the time?
No.
Okay.
But they are there within 30 minutes, I think.
Okay.
If there's ever a problem, one of those two guys is probably at the bridge site. In fact, I heard that one of the commissioners say that they thought it should be changed to Marquis Bridge because the truck is there so often. And some of it is just knowledge of how everything works. And again, you got wires under the water, and you got 100-year-old bridge,
and many of the parts have to be fabricated by them.
Absolutely.
And, these kind of things. So I know
it's not like you're buying spare parts. No,
they're not going to Lowe's. Yeah. All right. Here's a question for you that we received. How do you think the lit tax money should be spent? How much should be allocated for salaries for police and fire and EMS? Do you think any money should be used for a new jail? We had John Boyd on the show recently, and he said the next sheriff, whether it be Andy Heineck or Ron Haig, is going to probably have to deal with that question.
And my answer to that question is just like I told you about Germany. I'll be long gone from the council before they have to deal with that issue. But there's no question, in my opinion, the jail should have been built out by Johnson Road at the Summit Farm when they put the addition on here. But that's water under the bridge. I mean, you can't change that. It's a faltering jail without question. It's like the bridge. I mean, it's just like you guys in your homes. You get 40, 50 years old, you're going to have to do some repair. And it comes a point in time when you just say, we can't keep fixing things. We've got to renew.
We've got Earl Cunningham on the show today. Earl serves on the LaPorte County Council here. And if you have a question, we've got about 5 minutes left, 219-362-0522. You're welcome to call or text me. So you keep on saying you might not be on the commission or on the council then. Do you plan on running for re-election, or are you going to be done after this?
I don't hate to even tell you how old I am, but I will definitely not be running for the county council again.
Okay, so this will be your last...
I've got 2.5 years, or actually 2 years and 5 months, I guess, now.
So that's nice then. You don't have to worry about a re-election campaign or anything like that, huh?
There's not going to be a re-election campaign for Earl Cunningham.
Do you think it gives you a little bit of freedom, though, to also vote conscious, to say, you know what, I don't have to worry about what votes are going to, I really can think, not to say that you do this all the time or anything, but I know enough politicians to know that if it's an election year, votes are a little scrutinized a little harder.
That's one of the things. I was very fortunate. I didn't run for political office until I was comfortably retired, and it wasn't like I needed the money, so I never worried about getting reelected. If I don't get reelected, I have some more free time, and I'm not going to starve. So I've never thought about how does this play politically. I know that you're absolutely right. There are some people that do that, and it's tougher in an election year, but that won't affect my thinking at all.
So here's a question that we received here. The Plan Commission, LaPorte County Plan Commission, recently asked a proposed subdivision near Rolling Prairie. We had two responses: a celebration that more growth isn't going to happen in that area because they didn't want that, and also anger that the county isn't willing to allow new housing development. So we had both groups. I saw them online as well.
Right.
How do you balance that? Do you think the county needs to grow?
The county definitely needs to grow. We've been stable population for about 40, 45 years.
But nobody wants a subdivision in their neighborhood, though, right?
Well, that one was particularly complex just because of the exact location surrounded by farming. I think they said 3,500 to 4,000 cows, and they want to grow dairy cattle. Kind of a protected woods at one time. It's changed. I was pretty flexible. I wasn't sure I was going to vote on that until very late in that meeting. And I just... Here was the issue I know with some of the Plan Commission is you've got 30, 40 people in the audience that spoke. They had a special meeting before the Plan Commission that night. So it was a 2-hour complaint session instead of one. And in reality, they got up and made very good points. I mean, I shouldn't say complaints. It was valid, their personal feelings. And they moved there to get out of the city. Now, you think in terms of if that subdivision went in, it was virtually going to be as many people in that subdivision as there are in Rolling Prairie. So it was going to double the size. It was like another community.
Mm-hmm.
And the access to the road and the county farm equipment that was moving around, there were just a lot of negatives. And someone made this point that, you people are elected by us, and then we got a Chicago developer and a Chesterton something else and a Valpo attorney, none of whom are paying any taxes in LaPorte County. And I think that swayed some people later in the meeting.
I guess.
And another good point, let me go on there.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of open lots in current subdivisions. Well, until those are filled, I don't know that we need to stretch. And here's my idea on the growth. That's kind of halfway between LaPorte and Rolling Prairie. Well, the growth should start at Rolling Prairie and at LaPorte and grow to the middle instead of starting in the middle and growing to both ends. And that's my opinion. I mean, I think that's the way growth should occur. Michigan City growing toward Westville and Westville growing toward Valpo and LaPorte and Michigan City all at one time. But I don't want to go out and put a spot right in the middle of where, let's say, Purdue North Central is, and then say, well, we're going to build toward Michigan City and Westville.
How do you then get developers to want to do that, right? This developer wants this specific spot. It's a wooded spot. They want to put a subdivision that has some trees there, kind of things. Right. So you can't just say, well, go buy this farmland over here. It's a better farmland for you to buy, or this area over here, because they don't want that. They want that one. So how do you, because we see development happening in Porter County, Lake County, St. Joe County, and we don't see a lot of new housing development here in LaPorte County. So what can we do to encourage housing development, but also be kind to the neighbors that live there, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's you've got to be able to get along, and I think the number of people that could have been in that, they lowered it from 300 houses to 237, yeah. But if you say 3 people times 237, you're up to Rolling Prairie's population.
Yep.
That drastically changes the school system. It changes we're going to build a new Rolling Prairie base out there. They're already started. That will help for EMS. But it changes the dynamics when you have that many people in such a small area.
And I know, to speak for Tom Dermody, who has said it on here before,